Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here coming to you live from Mesa in Arizona. Or Mesa? Mesa? Hope you're all having a super fantastic sparkling day. Oh my gosh, my phone is going like crazy this morning. Um, it's Fun Friday. It's Finish It Friday. It's an awesome day. It is going to be a super fantastic sparkling day. So, what is today all about? Oh, we got lots of cool stuff happening today. Um, so Fun Friday is it's also Finish It Friday. So whatever it is that you have to finish up this week and projects and all of that sort of stuff, make a game out of it, make it fun. Find some way to reward yourself for completing those tasks. When you've completed those tasks, you get your reward. My major task for the week has already been completed. It was completed yesterday. Today I am working on a genealogy project, and I am super excited because there's lots of cool stuff showing up in this genealogy project, and kind of got me thinking about some of the crazy things that you come across in genealogy. There is so many wild stories out there about people when they've been searching for their ancestors, what they have found, what they have discovered. They've discovered people who they thought were their great grandparents weren't their great grandparents at all. Um, in fact, it was a different line completely. For example, there was a story in New Zealand in the newspaper that my mum sent me the other day about a historian in Palmerston North, which is the area where I was born, and they had found this anchor. I'm not exactly sure how the anchor. Oh, no, that's right, because the anchor was tied to her great grandfather's um, farm because he used to run the ferry across the river, and and so they started doing. The family had also done the DNA testing as well, and they found DNA links to their great grandmother's side of the family, but nothing on their great grandfather's side. And then it didn't explain in the story how or why, but they suggested trying this other guy's name who was somebody who worked on their farm or worked for them. And all these links started popping up, all these matches started popping up. And it turned out that this guy was actually the father of not only her, but not only her grandfather, but two of his siblings. And so there was a little family secret there. And so now they're all joking about whether or not they're actually going to change the name, the family name, because they've been known as this family for, they thought this guy was the great grandfather for 67 years. Turned out he wasn't. Then I was reading another story about a family who traced their ancestors back to the Salem witch trials. And one of the guys there, hang on, I've got it up here a second. What was his name? It said the Salem witch trials are among the most infamous events in American history. The witch hunt resulted in the deaths of 20 innocent people, 19 through hanging and one through pressing. And I thought, pressing? Ooh, that's got it. Oh, God. Um, I'm not even sure how they would do that. So I might have to, I don't know if I really want to research that. There are memorials to each of them in the town square today, and all but one of them have been officially pardoned by the town. So I'm kind of curious, why hasn't the 20th one been pardoned? One one ancestry user, because this is from ancestry.com and their blogs. One ancestry user traced a family line right back to one of those witch victims. It turns out she is the ninth great granddaughter of John Proctor, who was hanged as a witch in 1692, which adds to the already interesting story is that John Proctor later became the main character in Arthur Miller's play The Crucible, making him famous for generations to come. That was really cool. Another user's paternal grandfather's biological father was unknown. He was not named on the grandfather's birth certificate, and her grandfather's mother never revealed his name. Using DNA from her father, she found an exact match with a family from the town where her grandfather was born. After exchanging photos that proved a striking family resemblance, and then sharing stories with this match, the identity of the mysterious birth father came to light. She now has a whole new branch of her family to explore. Yet another ancestry user discovered a knight in her family tree. Noble families have typically kept excellent genealogical records. Following this trail, she was able to go back several centuries and discovered she is the 26th great granddaughter of King Edward III of England and all the royalty who came before him. How cool is that? I don't have any really cool stories like that, except for I have a great uncle who is actually listed in a book called The Most Dangerous Men in Australia with a question mark. And it's stories of about, I think it's 10 different guys and why they would be considered some of the most dangerous men in Australia. And this guy was, he was my second great uncle. And I'm like reading his story and I'm going, this is bad. Like he was a Nazi sympathizer. He apparently had some secret fund from the Nazis that he was supposedly looking after for them. Um, he was the landlord from hell. He basically terrorized his tenants, like rattling their door handles, made duplicate keys of all their apartments and stuff, and would go in when they weren't there. Basically terrorized the crap out of them. Um, he claimed he was from Germany, but he had no papers to show that he was from Germany. He then claimed he was born in the United States in the late 1800s, and when they wanted his birth certificate and stuff, he was born in San Jose. And when it came time, when people were asking for proof that he was born in America and stuff, he turned around and said his birth certificates were destroyed in the earthquake, the San Francisco earthquake, and using that convenient excuse and everything else. And he said that he traveled on a U.S. passport from America to Asia and then from Asia down, but he couldn't produce the passport. America had no record of him ever being issued an American passport. He was actually born in New Zealand. So there's all these trials and everything else, and he would hire thugs to go beat people up. He even when he was 70, he beat up a neighbor with a broomstick. This guy was horrific, and I'm just like reading all of this stuff about this guy, and I'm like, whoa, and then I suddenly realized that hang on, this is my great great uncle. I'm like, crap, I'm related to this guy. I mean, it's kind of like, whoa. So you can never know who is in your tree or what stories you will find out about them. And sometimes you'll come across newspaper articles about them when you're doing the searches and everything else. I had let's see, one, two, great great grandfather who was drowned in the Clutha River, and he fell into the river in May, and they didn't find his body till August, and they were able to identify his body, and this is according to the coroner's report. They were able to identify his body because of the boots that he had, because they were specially made to go around the corns on his feet. It's one of my favorite stories that I found in my ancestry line. But there's a lot of great stories out there, a lot of mysteries and things too, like um, people think they're related over here, but actually they're on this line over here. They come across court cases. There was another one I was reading about where a woman discovered her great great her great grandmother was actually arrested and charged with assault on her ex-husband, but was acquitted because of the emotional distress that she was under at the time, because he used to abuse her when they were married. He used to abuse her and verbally as well as physically and all of that, and she left him and then ended up shooting him one day, coming across him or something. I can't remember the circumstances from the article, but came across him and shot him in the back. He actually survived the shooting, but he died a few months later from complications to his injuries. But he was engaged to another woman at the time, and she didn't even know that he had an ex-wife until she received a letter from her a few days before the shooting. But the jury acquitted her due to her extreme emotional distraught. And I thought, and that was like in 1907, and I was like, wow. There's some interesting stories out there. So what mysteries do you have in your family tree? I want to know, what mysteries do you have in your family tree? What crazy stories are in your lineage? And what should I say? I'm watching the Genealogy Roadshow just in bits and pieces along the way. This woman found out that she's related to Jesse James. That she was she. How was the relation? She wasn't a direct descendant. He was like a first cousin 10 times removed, I think, or was it somebody else that was first cousin 10 times removed? He was like a cousin, not a direct. She wasn't a direct descendant of his. But yeah, it's interesting when I'm watching the different stories and things that come up, and about the events in history the events of history that were going on at the time, when people are asking the questions about, am I related to this person? And they go back and find, well, there was this incident going on at the time. Yes, you are. No, you're not. Or usually when they tell the story behind, they give you the history behind the event, you're sort of like, they're related somehow. They wouldn't be telling that story about that event if there was no relation to it. So it's interesting. It's going back through time and finding these little stories that make up your family tree. And I've had been researching family trees and come up where people have murdered people and been put in prison for murdering some family relative or something. Um, there's been ones where I've come across hero stories where there's an article about how somebody stepped in, some great grandfather or great grandmother stepped in and saved somebody from some incident that happened to be happening at the time, or happened to be there at the scene, witnessed the thing. I've got another one. I'm not sure how they're connected to my family in some way. I'm just not sure of the connection. But even in New Zealand, one of my relatives somewhere along the way, I don't know the exact connection to the family. I'm still researching that. They've got a leg of the family over here, but I don't know how it fits into exactly where in my tree it fits. So I'm researching that, and one of them was actually a lawyer in New Zealand who got disbarred for embezzlement and falsifying court records and things like that. And I was like, ooh. And then he wondered why his wife divorced him. So, that's somewhere in my family tree. It's not in my direct line. It's on one of the side wings over there that I've got to figure out exactly where that branch fits into the tree. But I do know it is connected to the tree. I just don't know how. So it's interesting coming across all these different stories, and then reading death certificates is a very interesting thing. Like I read the death certificate of one person on a tree that I'm researching, and he died of a cerebral hemorrhage caused by heart disease. And I'm like, that kind of sounds okay. If that's what the doctor put down, then I guess that's what it was. And there was another one of those crazy stories where on the death certificate, the woman had been through how to get to America. She'd come into America. They had struggled in the place where they were coming from. They had her and her family, her husband and their kids had finally made it to America. They finally got set up. They'd been here, I think it was like a year that they'd been here, here in America, and she got struck by lightning and killed. That was on her death certificate, that she got struck by lightning. But it gave the backstory of all the struggles and everything that she had been through to get, for her and her family to come to America, get settled here. They bought a farm, and then she goes and gets struck by lightning. And I'm sort of like, really? After all of that struggle, you get struck down by lightning and killed. I'm like, oh my gosh, after all those trials and tribulations, you finally got your family in a safe place, you got settled and everything else, and you get taken out by lightning. So it's interesting going back and reading family documents, reading vital documents like death certificates, seeing how people died. I know that sounds morbid to some people, but in some cases it is a good thing to go and have a look at those, because you could end up with a history of cancer in the family. There may be a history of heart disease, a history of diabetes, because the cause of death will be listed there. But if they have a chronic illness, like I'm trying to think, which one was it? There was one where I read where the person passed away, where their heart just gave out, but they had an underlying condition of diabetes, and they contributed that the body was weakened by the diabetes, and the heart ended up giving out. So there are stories like that are out there on the death certificate. So it's always good to check the death certificates of your direct ancestors, and maybe some of the relatives on the side as well, to see if there's a pattern. So if you have a great grandfather who may have passed from heart disease, did any of his siblings or his kids also pass from heart disease? And that could be a trait that goes down through the family. So it could be in the DNA that the family could be prone to heart disease, and that's something that you need to be aware of, so you can take measures to ensure that you keep a healthy heart. So it's finding interesting stories like that. But the ones I like are the ones that end up sort of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, are you related to royalty? Were you related to somebody who was accused of being a witch in Salem witch trials back in the 1600s? Did you have somebody notorious in your past who was a thug of some sort, a gangster, an embezzler, all sorts of fun stories. There's even stories that have come out where they've had grandmothers who used to work in the dance halls. Lots of interesting stories. And And when you think about all of these stories, all these colorful things, they're like a patchwork quilt. So if you think of all the different colored squares on a patchwork quilt, they all come together to make that beautiful quilt. And some people will take um, favorite shirts from somebody who's passed. Like, for example, I've known of people who lost a loved one, and they took all of his flannel shirts and cut them up and made this beautiful patchwork quilt out of it. Um, there was one woman I met in a campground, and she had done something similar with that. She had taken all of her husband's T-shirts, and she had three grandchildren, so she cut the T-shirts up into um, into pieces and made three quilts out of her husband's T-shirts and stuff, and used them to make these three quilts so each of the children got their own quilt made with their father's favorite T-shirts, so that they could be wrapped in their things. There's stories out there of people who have taken children's favorite clothing over the years and then created a quilt out of that clothing, and the years to make a baby's blanket for a crib for the firstborn grandchild or something like that. So there's all these stories out there about how. So when you bring these stories and they all interweave in some way and they end up making this beautiful quilt, that is part of your history. Um, that's a really good analogy, because you've got all these different pieces that come together to make this beautiful quilt, and it ends up being the person that and traits are passed down through generations. And when you're researching this, you will find some of these traits coming through, and you'll understand. And finally, you'll understand, like, oh, so that's why I always wanted to do that. Oh, that person was a wonder person. That's why I always wanted to be, wanted to travel so much. Or, this person out here, I've got this. For me personally, I have a lineage of duty-bound people. I've got military, I've got nurses, I've got police, I've got what was my grandpa? He was a lay minister, I think he was. And my grandparents always worked in thrift stores and stuff like that. And so I've got that lineage as well. So I've got that lineage of service. And so I wondered where that in my nurturing nature came from. And when I realized that, I said, like, oh, that explains a lot now. But you never know what comes through your makeup. Where did it come from? What mysteries do you have? What crazy family stories do you have that have been passed down through generations? There's a lot of crazy stories out there. And then when you start doing the genealogy research, we actually can tell you, oh, that was actually true. Well, that one's not true. That's just a family myth. But, most myths have some seed of truth in there. We just got to, through the genealogy research and stuff, we can go and we can find out and we can uncover what that seed was, and maybe about how over the years the stories changed to what we hear today. So anyway, I'll rabbit it on long enough. I got to go do some more family tree research. So have us and figure out all these voicemails that I'm getting this morning. I don't know why, but it'll be fun to find out. Have a super fantastic, sparkling, fun Friday and finish it Friday. Go get those projects finished for the week so you can start a weekend with a clear desk. And on Monday, you can come in with a fresh perspective for everything else and get started on your next lot of to-dos. Have a super fantastic, sparkling day. We'll catch you later. Hei konera.